Hey there, Christophe from the French Herbal. Today we're talking about the benefits of red beetroot, one of my favorite vegetables. It's delicious, it's crunchy when eaten raw, and it can be juiced. This is not red wine, it's beetroot juice. I'm not going to discuss the nutritional benefits of beetroot because plenty of websites have already covered that topic. But instead, I'd like to explore something a bit more complicated. I'd like to elaborate on its medicinal properties in the most practical way, looking at forms and quantities to consume. In other words, if I had certain health issues and if I wanted to use beetroot as a medicinal plant, in what form and how much would I take, right? It's not an easy discussion, but let's see how it goes. And as you can see, I put my red t-shirt on just for the occasion. There's a written version of everything I say on my website, plus the subtitles in case my French accent is an impediment. You never know. At this point, I don't have all the answers because we don't really have enough practical experience for such uses of beetroot. But we do have a fair amount of scientific data, and that's what I'll base my opinion on. As a practitioner, I haven't really used beetroot much in my work so far. I plan to because I find the data quite intriguing. But what you'll hear today isn't practical feedback, right? It's more of a scientific perspective and, let's be honest, a slightly speculative one. Also, please check the precautions at the end of this episode. And one last point, I will focus on raw beetroot, because cooked beetroot probably loses some of those properties. It will retain some, but it will also lose some, and I haven't explored that part. Before we dive in, just a quick reminder, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a pharmacist or healthcare professional. I'm here to share my passion with you regarding herbs, and nothing I say is meant to replace medical care or to serve as a diagnosis or prescription. Okay, let's start with the cardiovascular properties of beetroot, which are probably the most studied ones for this vegetable. Beetroot has a clear effect on arterial health. And let me explain how it works. You'll see it's just fascinating. So beetroot contains nitrates, and you probably heard about nitrates, usually in a negative context. Over the past few decades, we found high concentration of nitrates in water due to pollution, mainly from agriculture, like intensive, livestock farming, massive fertilizer spreading, etc., etc. And these nitrates can be harmful to health in excessive amounts. But in that case, we have beneficial nitrates in beetroot. And these nitrates are absorbed through the intestinal tract, and they enter the general circulation, and then about 1/4 of the absorbed nitrates are excreted into saliva, where oral bacteria transform them into nitrites. And by the way, one study shows that if you use an antibacterial mouthwash, this conversion happens poorly, meaning you won't get the full benefits. So beetroot plus a commercial mouthwash, not a good idea if you want to get the full benefits. So at this stage, after conversion, those nitrites go back down into the digestive tract. They enter the bloodstream again, and now they're metabolized into nitric oxide. And what does nitric oxide do exactly? Well, it acts as a vasodilator. It relaxes the arteries. That's why beetroot protects the cardiovascular system, especially when there is elevated blood pressure. And it's not just the nitrates that are beneficial. Beetroot also contains flavonoids and carotenoids, particularly pigments called betalains, which appear to be highly active for health. These substances have a strong antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, so they offer remarkable cardiovascular protection because chronic inflammation is a major factor in cardiovascular disease today, so beetroot will tone this down. Now, do we have human studies confirming this blood pressure effect? Yes, we do. For example, a 2015 double-blind placebo-controlled study funded by the British Heart Foundation included 68 hypertensive patients. They were split into two groups, one placebo group and one group drinking 250 milliliters of beetroot daily. Give you an example, this is 120 milliliter. So 250 would be 2 of those glasses per day. The group drinking beetroot juice saw their systolic blood pressure drop by an average of 8 points if you use the international scale for blood pressure. And I'm mentioning this because in France, we say, for instance, 12/8 for systolic over diastolic. In the international scale, it's 120/80, right? So the drop of 8 points is in the international scale. There was also reduced arterial stiffness and 20% improvement in endothelial function, meaning that the inner lining of the arteries was better at producing nitric oxide. Now, to be clear, we also have studies where the blood pressure reduction was not as significant. These were done on different type of participants, and we see variations depending on age and sex. One study showed much better results in men and almost none in women. That said, results always go in the right direction, lowering blood pressure. And given how easy this intervention is, I would say, it's an option worth considering if your blood pressure runs a bit high. Is beetroot enough on its own? Well, it depends on your goal, but by itself, probably not, right? So don't think of beetroot as the magic tool. Think of its cumulative effect when combined with other plants, other herbs, and other lifestyle measures, right? And again, always check with your doctor first. As for forms and quantities, we're talking about 250 milliliters of juice per day. Let's stay in the vascular system now with a fascinating study on Raynaud's syndrome. You know what I'm talking about? People with poor circulation in their hands and feet. And the cold triggers spasms in small blood vessels, and suddenly part of their fingers turn white and cold, usually the tip of the fingers. A lot of people suffer from it. It's actually quite common. In France, according to the figures I found, about 15% of women and 10% of men are affected, right? There's a 2019 study involving 23 people. So yeah, I know it's a small sample size. 23 people with Raynaud's syndrome in a double-blind placebo-controlled study. Participants either took regular beetroot juice or the same juice with the nitrates removed, right? That was the placebo group. And for it to be a proper placebo, it needs to look, taste, and smell like beetroot juice, but without the active substance in it. The protocol was a bit complex, but I'll simplify it. Participants took either 140 milliliter of juice, which is about this glass more or less, just once before entering a lab where they were exposed to cold to trigger Raynaud's symptoms. And in the other group, participants took 70 milliliters per day, so about half of that glass every day for 13 days, plus 140 milliliter shot on test day. The results: increased blood flow to the thumb during cold exposure. Why the thumb? Because that's where they measured, right? But obviously the result applied to all fingers. There was also improved vasodilation in the forearm, suggesting better circulation lower down in the arm as well. I find this study very interesting because it seems that the effect was noticeable even with a small amount of juice, right? So during winter, when Raynaud's symptoms are most bothersome, a daily beetroot juice routine might be worth testing for a period of time. Okay, the next property we'll look at are linked to brain and cognitive functions. We have a study that analyzed the effect of a dietary nitrate consumption. The study compared two groups. one consuming a nitrates-rich diet, including beetroot juice, and another group consuming a low nitrates diet. The study lasted 1 day, so a very short intervention. The average age of the participants was 75, and afterwards they underwent MRI scans, and researchers observed that a nitrates-rich diet led to better blood flow, what we call perfusion, in the frontal cortex, a brain region responsible for many essential cognitive processes. Another study confirmed those findings, showing reduced arterial resistance, meaning better circulation, better blood flow in the brain's middle region with a 500 milliliter portion of beetroot juice. So that would be like 4 of those glasses. The study involved young participants, while the previous one involved older adults. So it seems to work both in young and old. So in practice, beetroot juice or beetroot as a vegetable is a great food to support better brain circulation and better cognitive performance. If you're dealing with memory or cognitive issues, especially age-related ones, beetroot juice might be interesting as an intervention, right? The studies tested a range of 250 to 500 milliliter, although you might wonder, 500 milliliter per day, which is half a liter or half a quart for you American folks, isn't that a bit much in terms of sugar content? Well, that's an excellent question. I'll probably surprise you on that topic. We'll come back to that in a few seconds. To wrap up on cognitive performance, once again, beetroot juice can be combined with other measures. Right? I've already talked about rosemary for cognitive function in another episode. We'll link to that. Ginkgo has been well studied too. There are plants like bacopa that we can easily grow at home. And when you're dealing with a long-lasting issue, never think of one herb as a standalone solution, but think of herbs plural, as a team. They all contain different constituents that can act as a synergy if the team members are selected properly. The next property we'll look at is an anti-inflammatory effect. And there are plenty of studies on this. Beetroot seems to act on the entire inflammatory cascade at different levels. Prostaglandins, leukotrienes, TNF-alpha, interleukin-6, and so on. So we're talking about a broad spectrum anti-inflammatory action. This has been demonstrated mostly in animal studies, but we also have a few human studies in the context of long COVID and type 2 diabetes. All the references are on my website. Now, in practice, I cannot really tell you how to use beetroot as an anti-inflammatory tool. Say if you had joint inflammation, other than to say it's a great vegetable to add to your salads or to consume as a juice on a regular basis if you're dealing with inflammation, right? But I don't have enough clinical practice yet to tell you how much for how long. The last property we'll discuss is its anti-cancer effect. And here we're still in the realm of speculation, simply because we don't have much human data. Several in vitro and animal studies are quite promising though. For example, on lung, skin, liver, prostate, breast, and pancreatic cancer cells. We can speculate from those studies that beetroot could be a very interesting vegetable for cancer prevention. An interesting finding from these studies is that beetroot seems to reduce the toxicity of doxorubicin, which is a chemotherapy drug known for its serious side effects. So once again, a potential supportive role there. All right, let's summarize. We've reviewed 4 key properties of beetroot that have been fairly well studied. We saw 2 properties backed up by human studies with known effective forms and doses, mainly as a juice. Those are the cardiovascular benefits, including high blood pressure and Raynaud's syndrome, and the effect on brain circulation and cognitive function. Then we have two more speculative but still fascinating properties as anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer, for which we don't yet have a clear human data on forms and effective dosage.
Hey, just a quick pause to let you know you can grab my free ebook on preparing herbal teas for the 4 seasons. It's full of simple recipes and blends you can make with herbs you can buy or even grow almost anywhere. The link is right below this episode. Go check it out.
Now, let's talk about a burning question you may have, especially if you're interested in metabolic issues, which are increasingly common in our countries. How does beetroot juice affect blood sugar? Isn't it loaded with sugar? Well, for 250 milliliter of juice, you get about 20 grams of sugar. Ouch, that's quite a bit. 20 grams in one drink. But hold on, we're not talking about just any type of drink here. This is beetroot packed with antioxidants and compounds like nitrates. And here is where I'll probably surprise you. Beetroot juice actually has a beneficial effect on blood sugar, insulin levels, and insulin resistance. I won't go through the entire literature on beetroot and blood sugar, but there's a very thorough review paper that I'll share with you on my website. It's a 2020 review, so fairly recent. Beetroot may act in several ways here. Through nitric oxide, we see improved viability of pancreatic beta cells, the cells producing insulin in the pancreas. Better circulation in the pancreas. Enhanced translocation and expression of the GLUT4 receptor, that famous receptor on our cells that capture glucose to bring it inside the cell to use it. And reduced intestinal absorption of glucose. So once again, a broad spectrum effect that improves sugar metabolism despite its natural sweetness, right? It's pretty incredible what that little root can do. So if you're asking, quite rightly, what about the glycemic load of the beetroot juice? Doesn't that bother you? I'd say no, not really. When I consider all the beneficial effect, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Of course, if you're diabetic, be careful. You could gradually increase the quantity ingested while testing the effect with a glucometer, and always check with your doctor too. But otherwise, personally, I'm happy to pour myself a small glass of juice once in a while. Okay, to finish, let's talk about precautions. First, beetroot, whether it's sliced or grated in its raw form, can be difficult to tolerate for people who have trouble digesting raw foods, right? So introduce it gradually if you never tried it before. If you have a juicer at home, juicing the raw beetroot is the best way to take advantage of the properties. You can also buy the juice already made in your favorite organic store. The juice is not always well tolerated. It can irritate the gut of sensitive people and provoke diarrhea. So test a small amount and increase gradually. The presence of oxalates means it's best not to consume it daily and to adapt according to the person. For example, it's not suitable for people prone to calcium oxalate kidney stones, right? From what I've found, beetroot juice contains around 800 to 1,000 milligram of oxalic acid per 100 milliliter of juice. So moderation is advised. And this is where you start to see that health and the natural tools we use are not black and white, right? It's not natural, always good. It's a matter of weighing benefits and risks in a given context. So due to the oxalic acid content, it's probably not wise to drink it every day. We talked about a Raynaud syndrome, for instance. Well, in that context, maybe a 2 to 3 weeks course during the coldest winter days makes sense if it helps you. We talked about high blood pressure. Well, okay, then maybe you might rotate red beetroot juice with other herbs and supplements. Again, the goal of this episode is not to say it's amazing, drink it every day, but rather use it in combination with other lifestyle measures, right? Don't go looking for the miracle cure. It does not exist. One last precaution. Some people in my French audience have shared with me a statement from the French Consumer Protection Agency about the potential risk of food poisoning from eating raw beetroot. And unfortunately, I cannot find any clear explanation for this. And I quote the agency, they say, "For now, we cannot offer any scientific explanation." Our experts have reached out to researchers in the US and Finland where similar cases have occurred. Until we have more solid information, I personally won't be giving up on my raw beetroot in salad nor the occasional juice I make with other vegetables. The benefit to risk ratio seems very positive to me. And that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you end up with red stained fingers and a red mustache, people might laugh, but I will be cheering for you. I love my beetroot. Thank you. We'll talk soon for the next episode of The French Herbal.